Hello everybody, welcome to Life is Brutal. Today we're going to be doing another episode of This Week in Beer! The segment of my channel where we go through and we talk about the best, the most hard-hitting stories coming out of brewing, beer, and the beer industry that all happened this week. Now, first off, I'm sorry that this video is late. This has been one hell of a week and I just was not able to get it out on time. I apologize. I have plans for the future that will prevent this from happening again, but we'll see. Life is fluid that way. Secondly, I know the first thing that everybody's going to want me to talk about is the great Super Bowl corn syrup debacle coming out of Bud Light. Well, I do plan on talking about that, but it turned out to be a much longer topic than I was expecting it to be when I really started spilling my brains out and trying to write up a script for it. And it turns out that it's long enough to be its own dang video, which I was really trying to avoid because I really don't care that much. But alas. So stay tuned next week where I will beat this dead horse to oblivion and spill my opinions on it. What I think might surprise you. So let's get into it. The first story this week is coming out of the legendary, the prolific, the grandfather brewery of craft beer, Anchor Brewing out in California. This Thursday, workers of Anchor Brewing have decided that they are going to band together and unionize. Employees from Anchor Brewing have decided that they are going to organize this union with the help of, I'm going to look at my computer so I don't get this wrong, the International Longshoremen and Warehousemen Union, as well as the Democratic Socialists of America, San Francisco chapter. Now, apparently some issues have arisen here lately, mostly after the sellout from Anchor Brewing where they got bought by the Japanese Sapporo. And apparently since that merger, that craft beer sellout, things have gotten a little bit uncomfortable and has made a lot of the employees unhappy enough that they decided that a union is the only way that they are going to be able to stand up and fight for their rights. Maybe they should have done that before they were sold out and they would have, had a little foot up in this. But I understand that the way these sellouts often work, a lot of the employees have no clue what's happening until it's too late. So I'll give you a pass this time. Some of these changes include the loss of employee beer privileges, which is basically enough to start a goddamn riot as far as I'm concerned. And if you don't know what that is, basically a lot of breweries offer a beer privilege, a beer allotment allowance to employees where they can either take some beer home with them or in between shifts they're allotted a certain amount of beers that they're able to drink for free in between or after shifts. And Sapporo has taken that away from them. And that's about just enough to make me want to unionize in itself, but there are some other issues as well. There has been a stop in contributions to 401k plans. Several employees throughout different aspects of the brewery have faced wage cutbacks or losses in total, as well as many employees facing hour cutbacks, which prevents them from being able to get full employee benefits like healthcare, dental, that type stuff. California law states that if you work more than 30 hours in 1 week, you are automatically entitled to these benefits. That is California law. Now, since the Sapporo takeover, many Anchor employees have seen a dramatic cut in their hours, some getting less than 15 a week, causing them to have to get second, maybe even third jobs. And it seems to be basically stemmed around the entire fact that they're trying to cut costs to make themselves more profitable, and in return, basically just hurting their employees' livelihood. But it's not all selfish. There are some actual pretty altruistic reasons why they are wanting to fight for Anchor's heritage, their legacy. They are afraid that if Sapporo continues to get their way, not only are we going to see more crackdown on employee benefits, but they're also potentially going to start producing Anchor steam beer in other production facilities around the country and possibly even globe. Steam beer is a San Francisco heritage beer. You got the Kentucky Commons, you got the New England IPAs. Well, San Francisco was known for steam beer way back in the day. Now, Anchor did do some pretty shady shit a long time ago where they copyrighted the term steam beer, so that way they're basically able to monopolize on an entire style, and that's why you see a lot of California Commons. So, bit shady, yes, but simultaneously, if they are to take that and start mass producing it all around the world, it is going to diminish what that term used to mean. And a lot of employees are lifelong craft beer fans, and the loss of the true meaning of steam beer would be devastating to the industry as a whole, I think. One Anchor employee released a statement that says, "Anchor is a San Francisco institution that used to be known for being a good job. We want to make the company an attractive place to work again." Which on its face sounds all well and good. However, it is yet to be seen how the corporate overlords feel about this situation. Any contact to Sapporo asking for a statement, they direct you to Anchor themselves for, basically flicking that booger. And as of this time, Anchor has yet to make an official statement regarding this unionization of its employees. So we don't know if they stand behind them. We don't know if they're against it. We just don't know how Anchor feels about this. But I know how I feel, and I think it's one hell of a good idea. Now, the reason I support this, I'm not overly a fan of unions. I have worked in both a union and I have worked as a non-union employee with union employees. And I can say there are a lot of complications and frustrations that come along with being in a union or working with a union. But here's the issue. The cost of living has drastically increased all across America over the past several decades, while wages have remained almost stagnant. That means it is becoming harder by the day to be a citizen in America and make a decent living. And in the brewing industry, we are seeing almost across the map low wages, low benefits, long hours, hard work. It's just getting really, really difficult. For as expansive as craft beer has gotten, that means it's gotten even more competitive, which makes employers have to cut corners, and oftentimes at the expense of its employees. And not everyone has a good boss looking out for them. A lot of employers don't have their employees' best interests in mind. All they care about are bottom lines, profitability, and that's where the union comes in. Employees need someone to have their back, and if their boss isn't going to do it, they got to do it themselves. And I wholeheartedly believe that the brewing industry is definitely one of those markets where unions are needed. When I talk to many of my friends within the industry, they always say the same things. They absolutely love their jobs, they're fulfilling their dreams, they're doing what they want to do with their lives. But simultaneously, they're overworking themselves. They're spending long days and nights in the brewery, day after day, week after week, for basically forever. And simultaneously, they're not getting paid that much. They have somehow been able to turn a passion project that is extremely profitable for the most part and turn it into, I'm not going to say slave-like conditions, but definitely not all that much better than you would find in many minimum wage and blue-collar jobs. Plus, there's also a huge risk of workplace injuries, and these are all things that unions can help keep employees protected, covered, and employed. So I am a huge advocate for anything that boosts employee rights. And if you've ever worked a blue-collar job, if you've ever worked a minimum wage job, you know how difficult, how rough, and how demeaning it can be sometimes, and how much employers or people in higher positions than you can take advantage of you. So I think this is a necessary step for the brewing industry. And although there has been some breweries in the past who have tried and failed, if Anchor Brewing is successful in establishing this union, they will be the first official craft brewery in the entire United States to officially have a union. They are paving the path. They are making a blueprint for the rest of the industry, So I definitely give them a kudos, a tip of the hat, and I wish them the best. I just hope that this union is successful, and I hope that it fulfills the needs of the employees like it's meant to. So don't fuck this up, Anchor. You are potentially the first domino that could change this industry for the better. Don't fuck it up. Moving on to beers that have been announced or released this week. There wasn't a whole lot, and honestly, it's just so far in 2019, it has just been an abysmal year for beer releases. But one caught my eye, and that is coming out of California again. The New Agorist Brewing. I might be mispronouncing that. Also, your website is really confusing. You say you only sell one flagship beer, but simultaneously you've got other beers listed and plus this new beer release. So I'm not sure what the hell's going on with your whole business portfolio. Maybe a little clarification could help. But anyways, they have decided that they are going to be releasing a stout in solidarity with the most subscribed YouTuber, PewDiePie. Now, if you don't understand what I mean when I say solidarity, PewDiePie has recently, the past few months, been in neck-and-neck competition with a corporate entity based out of India known as T-Series. T-Series has been gaining tons and tons and tons of subscribers at an almost unprecedented rate. There's been allegations of a lot of shady, underhanded tactics such as sub-bots, and potentially, there hasn't been verified, but there are rumors out there that as more cell phone coverage becomes available to native Indians, a lot of those accounts that are being opened up in cell phone networks come with internet that is, including YouTube, that is automatically subscribed to T-Series. So it might not even be fans of the site, it might just be people new to the medium as a whole automatically being subscribed to a corporate entity. Sounds like a conspiracy, but also it doesn't really seem that out of the realm of possibility. Anyways, content creators from around the net, especially here on YouTube, have been in an active marketing campaign to be able to try to keep PewDiePie as the #1 most subscribed YouTuber, because it makes a difference. If you're just hanging out and living on YouTube all day like I am, you know, there's a golden era. You know, you remember that time when YouTube was an outlaw land. Everyone, it was broadcast yourself, post what you wanted. And with all the crackdowns and everything else that's been happening, the image of what YouTube's glory days were is rapidly fading away. So being able to keep PewDiePie in the #1 subscribed position is important to YouTube culture. Because if a corporate entity takes over, we've basically lost this safe bastion of expression. Anyways, this brewery started their own marketing campaign to try to boost PewDiePie's subscribers through their own fan base. So highly, highly, highly encourage all of you to go check them out. They started a Instagram campaign where if they get a certain number of subscribers, they'll release an imperial version of the stout. They will make it a permanent addition to their lineup, which I'm still not sure of. But they are very, 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 very far away from hitting their target goal. So go give them a little like, give them a little help. It's for a good cause, I'm assuming, if you're into YouTube culture. If not, this whole segment is a big waste. Next, beer. Well, honestly, nothing else out there seemed really that interesting, so I wasn't really planning on doing much more. Iron Maiden, if you're a fan of old 80s metal, you might not know it, but their lead singer owns a brewery where they've been releasing Iron Maiden licensed beer products, which are very subpar in my opinion. And they're releasing a nitro version of their Trooper Ale, which is basically a continental lager. So if you've ever drank a nitro beer, you know that they're kind of void of flavor and aroma. So somehow they were able to take a continental lager and make it even less flavorful and impactful and probably less rememberable. So I guess kudos to them. Anyways, let's jump back into the news where things are more interesting. The next thing I want to talk about is Rate Beer. You know, the website where you go and you, oh, I drank this beer and it tastes so good. Basically written review aggregate website. Well, they've completely sold out to AB InBev. Now, if this sounds like deja vu, that's kind of because it is. Back in 2016, Anheuser-Busch purchased a minority stake in the brewery. And at that time, they lost a ton of daily users. They lost a ton of integrity within the community. And it seems that enough people came crawling back, because a lot of people in the beer industry like to say they have morals, but really they're a bunch of spineless cowards. But somehow, Great Beer was able to make itself seem profitable enough and enticing enough for a complete corporate sellout. So AB now owns 100% stake of Rate Beer. This might not seem like that big of a deal, but let's think about it for a second. AB InBev currently owns a huge stake of the beer market, the majority to be 100% honest. Not only do they own one of the most profitable lines of all time, they also own a lot of craft breweries from around the country, which was the introduction of crafty beer. They also own the majority of distributors in all 50 states. They own massive plots of some of the most profitable and most sought after hops around the world, especially in South Africa. They also own massive chunks of the home brewing industry, to include its distribution and to include many stores that sell the actual home brewing products. So it's almost impossible to go out of your way to buy anything beer related without sending at least a couple of shillings into the pockets of AB. And with this purchase of Rate Beer, it just further solidifies their clutches on the beer industry as a whole. You can't even rate beers without giving money to AB InBev. And that does have some pretty severe implications. I mean, think about it. A website that was historically used to be able to get community feedback into what a particular beer is worth. You know, it kind of cuts out a little bit of hype, but it mostly focuses on sensory analysis. Does it taste good? Is it worth purchasing? And with AB InBev able to pull the strings and adjust the numbers, it gives them the ability to steer the industry in their direction if they were to utilize it in that way, which, if I had to guess, they will eventually do. I mean, think about it. There's pretty much only 3 major aggregate sites. You got Untappd, Rate Beer, and Beer Advocate. And with one of the 3 gone, I mean, that's a significant chunk. That's huge. But the story does get a little bit funny from here. The co-founder of Rate Beer took to the site's forums to post a little announcement saying that, hey, we have been bought out. He says, while this won't impact the day-to-day for anyone using the site, I wanted to let you all know that ZX Ventures, a division of AB InBev, has fully acquired Rate Beer. That the brewer's involvement in the business has enabled Rate Beer to make improvements to infrastructure, put out an in-house mobile app, and modernize key pages. Rate Beer is a quality-focused organization, and our value in the community has always depended on our integrity and willingness to put in a greater effort to produce more meaningful scores and information. I am very grateful for having the opportunity to serve you all. It's been a great pleasure meeting so many of you in person, and through this more fully understanding the important role in industry and the joy, pride, and responsibility felt by so many out there in Rate Beeria. I look forward to seeing where the future takes us. Thanks for helping shape this journey with me. Those are some nice words. But what does AB InBev do? They go and completely erase his post and all the comments. God, I love the irony of this all. So if you are a Rate Beer user, I'm curious, did you know about this? Does it matter to you? And with this newfound knowledge, are you less likely to use Rate Beer? And do you think their purchase is going to affect the overall integrity of this site? Am I being a little conspiratorial? Or do you think that AB InBev will use this newfound purchase to try and pull the strings and shape the industry perception in their own direction? I'm just curious to know what you think, so let me know in the descriptions down below. Whew, that was a lot of crazy news going on. So let's talk about one last story that will leave us all on a happy note. The last story is coming out of Denmark. In the city of Viborg, Denmark, there was some construction, some renovation going on in the old and abandoned Odin Brewery. The Odin Brewery opened in 1832 and stayed in production until 1988. That's huge. That is a long time. It was actually long enough for them to be able to solidify themselves as, at the time before their closing, the longest opened brewery in all of Denmark. And during this construction and this renovation, they had to pull up the floors because they were old and rotted and they need replacing. Well, underneath these floorboards, they were able to find 7 different beers from Odin's 1903 lineup. The labels were still intact and vibrant. The corks and cages were still intact, and 5 out of the 7 beers still were full. It's insane that they're as in a good condition as they are. I mean, they went from 2 world wars, for God's sake. But to make this story even cooler, stashed away with the bottles was a note from the brewer. See, at the start of the 20th century, Odin Brewing was going through a little bit of a hardship. They weren't selling as much, they weren't doing as well. But a new head brewer came in and he really turned things around and started making the whole business much more profitable. He was like, we need to do some renovation in this brewery and get it up and modernized. So he ripped up the floorboards. And while he was doing that, he thought to himself, I don't know how long these floorboards are going to last. There is a chance that will need to be replaced in the future from my successor. So he stuck a beer down there and left a note explaining it and giving some well wishes. That's one hell of a nice guy. Unfortunately, Odin Brewery has been shut down for a long time now, and this gift wasn't able to be handed off to, its future successor, which is incredibly sad. But the story doesn't have to end on a sad note. About 10 years ago, also in Denmark, the Carlsberg Brewery was able to find several bottles of a beer that it had released way long ago, back in the early 1800s. And they were able to do some lab analysis and find out exactly what the recipe was, what the ingredients were, what its OG was, all that stuff. And they even recreated it and released it to the public. There is a chance that someone could still take these exact same recipes from Odin, recreate them, and re-release them to modern day beer drinkers who would, I'm sure, love to be able to taste and appreciate this chunk of Danish history. But that's all I have this week. So like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, every bottle has a story, and that life is beautiful. Cheers.